Morning, everyone. Welcome to this special board meeting for, what day is it, Wednesday? November 29th. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Kwatsan, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Laakson, Paukachin, Dididat, and Pachidat nations, and those people whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. With that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before we do the adoption of the agenda, Mr. Robbins, I think we have a redundancy in the agenda.
We do, Mr. Chair. We were so excited about the strategic plan, we put it in twice. And so under unfinished business 13 is redundant because you'll have the CAO is going to speak to you about the strategic plan, then you'll have an opportunity to look at the recommendation that staff has put before you under SR1.
Thank you. So with the removal of the unfinished business, we'll ask for a motion to adopt the moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Abbott. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries.
You echoing?
Somebody's, I hear speakers somewhere.
Yeah, I just got in. Give me a second.
No, I thought it was over at the other end of the room. No? Okay, we're good. All right, so Mr. Robbins.
We do have a public input period, but I don't know if there's anybody joining us here in the gallery, and there's no one online, so I'd suggest we move right to staff reports. The report of the Office of the CAO with regard to the updated board strategic plan. And following that, there's a two-part recommendation from staff.
Ms. Miles Wilson, good morning. Microphone, when you get there.
Getting there. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. So we have an updated, refreshed, nice, reorganized strategic plan in front of you today.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you. We've got some
Director
audio
Martman?
issues.
No, they can't hear us at home.
Okay. Let me just see about the meeting.
Director McClinton, can you hear us?
One sec. Can you guys hear us now?
Yep.
Who's just
Yes,
muted?
they can hear us now. And we can also hear me twice. Okay. We're off to a hot start.
Okay, testing, testing. We're good. So, Mr. Chair, I'll just do a quick summary of some of the updates to this version, and then the memo that you have in front of you today is that we would be adopting the plan today with, hopefully. And the second part of the recommendation in front of you is that staff would provide an update on the progress of the strategic plan actions and to facilitate an opportunity for the board to review the plan priorities in advance of the annual budget process, so that we'd get into kind of like an annual review cycle with the refreshed document. So those are the two recommendations. You'll notice in the document that we have two new strategic objectives. The rest of them are somewhat tweaked, but very much the same in many ways as the previous plan. And so the two new strategic objectives are strategic objective number 1, which is around Indigenous reconciliation. So that's been moved up and is prioritized in the document. It's also a main theme in the document. And strategic objective number 4, which is to promote organizational excellence. And so, based on our last meeting in October, some of the document has been relabeled and reorganized. There was also direction from the committee to simplify the climate action section. And so there's a number of items in there that are already kind of woven into staff work plans. And so we've kind of simplified that section and taken out some of the text. It hasn't gone away though, it's already being kind of operationalized, so to speak. We have, I've also received some feedback from directors around certain things in the document, text, for instance, or reference to population and things that need to be tweaked, which I've documented all of that. You're free to speak to it today in front of your colleagues, but we are going to make a few minor administrative kind of tweaks to the document after this meeting just to make sure everything's absolutely perfect. And there's two things really which I was hoping to speak about today and hear what everyone has to say is around the chair's message, which was emailed out. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Director Segal for working with communications on that message. It sounds great. And then we have a vision statement, which we talked about last meeting as well. And there was a vision statement proposed by Director Justice, which people seem to really appreciate. So I wanted to kind of read that off and see if that still resonated and if we wanted to adopt that new vision statement. Mr. Chair, did you want to make any kind of, get right into it? Your message, I guess, is the first.
Yeah, I would say our message, and special credit to Director Segal for taking the time to focus the message, shorten it, and in my mind, make it better, but always open to feedback from the board. So if we want to get into that.
Sure. So by email, you received kind of a longer version and then a abridged, shorter version of the message. And I'm just looking to see if folks have a preference for one or the other. We can read them off here if you wanted to go through that.
I saw Director Douglas's hand. Director
Okay.
Douglas? Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here getting everything working, so.
Yeah, just a couple comments. One is, in June, with one of our strategic planning sessions, we did discuss advocacy or action items around advocacy. So some of the examples were around the private managed forest lands, land use planning for Vancouver Island as a region, local government financing. And my recollection, I think Ms. Miles Wilson sent out an email regarding this in the summer, was that the advocacy items were going to be included in the chair's message as opposed to specific action items. So wondering if that can.
Oh, apologies. I don't recall that, but we can do that if it's, I thought it was included in the draft plan, but.
I can reflect back on the notes. I know there was a several topics of advocacy that we talked about in some of the facilitated sessions. So I will go through the notes and work through the chair to kind of weave some of that into the message if that's an interest.
Yeah, the only comment I would make, though, is that specifics around advocacy work, generally at a high-level introduction letter, it'd be more well-placed specifics around advocacy within the strategic plan. If it's not in the strategic plan, it's not in the plan.
Yeah, I mean, my preference would be in the strategic plan. I'm just basing my comments on, it's an email that was sent out on July 14th, and that was where it seemed like there had been some agreement that it was going to be rolled into the chair's message. But what you said, Mr. Chair, about action items, I think probably makes more sense. So if there's still time to advocate that. And the specific examples in this July 14th email were, again, the Vancouver Island land use planning, private managed forest lands, water protection funding, and renewed fiscal framework for local governments.
And Mr. Chair, those are all topics of UBCM last year as well, just to reflect on that.
Another comment, Mr. Chair? Yeah, so the other one is just with regards to the focus on reconciliation, which is great. There is an action here, support community-led reconciliation, relationship building through engagement with First Nations. I think all that sounds great. The only part I think we need to get some clarity from, and this is particularly with regards to Cowichan tribes, is they are leading their own framework that involves engagement with local government. So our council did provide a support letter to Cowichan tribes who are applying for funding through UBCM to lead this work. And I know at North Cowichan, we did have plans on developing like a broader framework around reconciliation that we were prepared to move forward with. We had to put it on hold because Cowichan tribes had indicated to us that they were going to lead this process on their own. That was a couple of years ago. Not much happened since, but then again, that was our, last week, I believe it was, we provided the support letter for them to access this UBCM funding. So it doesn't mean we can't do our own work at the CVRD, but it would be great to ensure that whatever we're doing is coordinated with Cowichan tribes and other local First Nations. And if they want to take the lead on this sort of work, then my preference would be to support them and take them the lead on that rather than having two parallel processes.
Yeah, so we have had discussions very recently with Cowichan tribes around that effort, so that will be worked into our plans. I mean, we will have a subsequent discussion very shortly about that. And then more broadly with all of the nations within the region, we do want to continue to work and engage. But Ms. Miles Wilson can speak to that in more detail.
Yeah, I think, so we're moving forwards with the priorities of the board in creating this Indigenous relations framework for the regional district. Not to say that there wouldn't be unique arrangements with nations depending on their interests and the way that they would like to organize this work as well. So I think we're moving into this very open-minded, but we know that we need to get ourselves more organized in this work. So there's 10 nations that we will be engaging with at the government-to-government level, and then working through how staff engage as well. So I think there's room for it to be, I guess, somewhat flexible, but also recognizing that we need to kind of create a structure for our organization to make sure that we're meeting those expectations.
Thank you, Chair. I think Ms. Miles Wilson asked our preference about the Word documents drafted. I would opt for brevity and thank Director Segal for parsing those words down. People don't tend to read too many words these days, in my opinion.
Director Morrison.
I echo that. I'm just, contemplating what people who have talked to me about previous corporate strategic plans, and when they are a little wordy, they tend to be skipped over to a great extent. And I think that the briefer of the two versions hits the marks and shortens it up and is a lot more readable. So I'm more inclined in that direction as well. Thank you.
Any other comments? Sorry, I can't see all the screens at the same time, so I'm trying to look at up there for people online. If you're online and you want to speak to it, please use the electronic hand. That makes it easier to see. Director Morrison.
So are we sticking specifically to the chair's message? Or are we opening up to other tidbits of information?
I'll move on to the vision. Sorry, I'll move on to the vision statement after we're done with this item. So I guess I'm Mr. Chair, there's a,
I'll go to Director McClinton then.
yes, he
Yeah.
has his hand up.
Thanks, Chair. Just wanted to agree with the comments. Brevity is great. I like what Director Segal put together.
Okay. So I just want to put a note, though, in about the advocacy piece.
Yeah.
And when we get to the overall strategic plan, if we can find a place to include the advocacy note under one of the headings, I think that's something that we can, unless there's opposition to that, that we could settle today so that we can get the strategic plan drafted pending the inclusion of those items. And then we can make a reference to it briefly in the revised chair's message, the chair's plural message, and then we can move forward with that. Director Nicholson.
I guess
Days ago.
when I read the message, I like the short version as well, but it seems to be absent sort of the context that we're dealing with, apart from acknowledging the fact that everyone's suffering financially, or many people are suffering financially, and that reconciliation is important, and we need to work together. It doesn't really, I don't know, speak to, I think, what a lot of people are feeling in terms of the rapid change that we're experiencing in our environment and our communities. So it doesn't seem to me that it's really, letting people know that we've, there are those challenges and that we've tried to address.
And I see that Director Nicholson's microphone seems to be broken. I don't know if apparently we probably don't have any spares, but it buzzes when she turns it on. I'm not sure how well the voice comes through. Oh yeah, Director Martman's away today, so hopefully that one works properly. So it's more about those items like the intersecting crisis of climate change, homelessness, inflation, et cetera, or is it just more around the climate lens?
No, it's both of those, but I think my point is that if we fall into this, everyone is talking about how financially strapped we all are. And that is, but we need to keep our eye on the future. And what is going to make the financial situation even worse are the things coming at us if we don't address them. And I think that should be acknowledged in this. Chair's
you.
report.
I'll go back to Director McClinton.
The comment on what Director Nicholson said, I don't think that, well, I can't speak for everybody, but at least for me, I don't think that anybody's disagreeing there's a crisis. I think maybe we differ on what our role is to deal with it. And, and I think that's the part that, at least for me, I'd have a challenge with. If we're looking at mitigation, certainly, but, personally, I think that as a local official, we need to stay in our lane and address things that we have the capacity to address. So I just think that I don't think anybody's denying that there's significant challenges. It's just, what are we supposed to be doing about them, right? And so I'm certainly open to having a more fulsome discussion about that.
Thank you. Director Staples.
So I'm going to. So without going down a rabbit hole, which I feel like we're about to do, I would agree with what Director Nicholson was saying. I think that it's important for us in our positions, look at all the downloading that is coming from the province, and that the people in our community, we're the ones that they turn to first. And so while I hear what Director McClinton is saying about that there's a lot of things that we don't have control over, what we do have is a voice. And this is, a way to ensure that our community knows that we're using that voice to move things up to other levels of government. So that is a very strong and important part of our role. And so I think what I understand from what I hear Director Nicholson asking for is just that we're ensuring that we're letting people in our community know that we are that voice for them. And that is a very important part of what we do as elected leaders for our communities.
Thank you. And I see Director Martman.
Thank you. And yeah, I would agree with those comments from Director Nicholson and Staples. The one piece, I think it's already embedded in the longer version, where there's striking that balance between current and sort of future peoples. And so I'm wondering if that's a piece that could be sort of, now we make the brevity longer. So anyways, just my comment.
So I would say, there's, obviously, we can include some of this work around the advocacy item within the strategic plan and reference it more broadly, but specifically in the chair, vice chair message. So I think we need to put a note on that, and perhaps we're going to have to, I can already see that this is what happens when you have months between reviews of strategic plans, that we're getting back into more revisions, not closer to adoption. Director Deck.
I think our role is not only to advocate, but to act. And in Cowichan Adapts, there are definitely things we can do at the local level to reduce our greenhouse gases. Just for example, taking organics out of the waste stream is a very good way to do it. Transportation and and putting, electrifying new builds, all of those things we can do at the local level. So it's not just an advocacy role as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. And I wasn't meaning to suggest that we ignore the things that we're already doing or the things that we have planned to do on the horizon. Director Segal.
Yeah, I just want to say these are all really great points and very easy to integrate into that chair's message. There are some powerful online tools that make it very easy.
Ms. Miles Wilson.
Yes, so what I'm hearing is that there's some feedback that I've taken note of, and I know that the chair and vice chair have taken note of, so we'll take that away, and we will come up with a final message, which will be incorporated into the document reflecting what you've shared here. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to move into just speaking about the vision statement, if I may. Okay, so I had emailed out last night the current vision statement as well as the proposed revision that we discussed, I think, on October 12th. Thank you, Director Justice, for raising that. But you'll recall that everyone was very inspired by the message that Director Justice had shared. So I just wanted to read that off and see if it still resonated and if we indeed wanted to incorporate it into the document. So the current vision statement reads that the Cowichan region is a diverse collection of vibrant, livable, and healthy communities balanced in its pursuit of economic, social, and environmental opportunities. It's very brief. And the revised statement that's being proposed is that the Cowichan region is a diverse collection of vibrant, livable, and healthy communities working together to serve the public good, plan for the future, and help build a livable, sustainable, and resilient region. The Cowichan region is where all residents are included and have access to a quality of life that is fulfilling for them, and where there is an abundance of social and economic opportunities, and where there is a healthy environment for current and future generations. Does that hit the mark?
Sold.
Yeah? Easy peasy? Okay. So we'll work that one into the document then, if that still fits with folks. Okay. That was
Okay.
easy. Okay.
So before we get into sort of more general comments, I wonder if it's constructive to take a few minutes to reflect on both adapting the chair's message and inclusion of those items within the actual draft strategic plan. I know I don't have an easily editable copy, or do I, in my email maybe, of the draft plan, or is this a document is PDF'd, of course?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's PDF'd. If you wish, I can kind of lead you through section by section, not to get into the nitty-gritty details of each, but just a high-level kind of summary of some of the changes that have been made. And then we can decide where you want to work that advocacy point into. I do have a suggestion of where we can put that.
Well, maybe, can we perhaps maybe, if we go section by section, I hope everybody's got no dinner plans. Frankly, I think we need to like focus in on what changes need to be made, and then if there is a desire to go section by section, we can. But if you've got a suggestion where we can include that advocacy piece,
Yeah.
and if we need to strengthen any language in there elsewhere, maybe we can kind of focus on where those might be, and hopefully sort of perhaps even take a recess, make a few edits on the fly, and
Yeah.
review it and get it moving.
So to the first point about the advocacy section, I would suggest we move it into our commitment section, strategic objective number 2, which is to serve, strengthen, and connect Cowichan communities through collaborative governance. We can put an advocacy piece in there. And I would just simply state that the goal is to advocate to senior levels of government and list those items that we talked about before. They were all topics of UBCM, which we prepared for and had many meetings that were, some of which were fairly productive, but we can just kind of reflect that those are still those advocacy priorities for the rest of the term. We're not going to let up, and we're going to keep having those conversations to advance those issues. So I can just work it into that section if that's okay.
Thank you, sorry, there's a lot of stuff going on over here.
So working it into strategic objective number 2 is my proposal, and we'll just take the UBCM topics and the list from July that we talked about, and we'll work it in as a goal or objective in the section. if that works.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get to that spot. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, that section looks appropriate. Another one maybe to consider would be 6.5, which already includes advocacy with regards to watershed management. I mean, that one's already a pretty detailed action, but I mean, it's another strategic objective to consider. Leave it to staff to figure that out.
Okay, so it's either work it into section number 2 or expand 6.5, which is around creating livable, healthy, livable, and efficiently serviced communities. So it could fit in either.
Yeah, either expand 6.5 or put something under objective
Yep.
6, or like you said, objective
Okay.
2.
I don't know if I have a preference to either. I think both would work. So I think we can expand 6.5 as it's already in there if you'd like to do that. We'll just go ahead and make that change. Yep.
Director Nicholson.
Thanks. Well, I think that I think maybe what should go into the first one is the advocacy idea that, and a process for looking at it more strategically on an annual basis, because there will be things that pop up that we will want to advocate about, and things that we hopefully are successful with that can fall off. But there's also, you know, in all throughout the strategic plan, there are areas where you want to do advocacy. And I think that maybe Director, what's your name? Director Douglas's Director Douglas's point about the private managed forest land, I think it was just missed, right? So that's a watershed thing.
Mr. Chair, as a kind of a follow-up to that, I like that idea. And in other places I've worked, we've come up with the topics of advocacy, which are then kind of like marching orders for directors when they're appointed to committees in the community. You kind of know what your top 3 or 5 issues are that you're to advocate for at that table. So it can be helpful as well when you're reporting back to the board on your activities on those appointments. I've noted that, Mr. Chair.
So I'm looking to the table. I don't know if I've missed anyone. Director Nicholson.
I have a general comment about this strategic plan, and maybe it would be, I just need to get it off my chest. So I'll do it now. I feel, I am disappointed in our strategic plan. Not that we have worked quite, we've had some good discussions, and there's a lot there, and I think it sets a direction, but I think about it like we've set a direction, I don't know, maybe it's north, but we haven't sort of set some targets that are specific enough that's going to say that we get to, you know, this town by lunchtime for lunch kind of thing. And I really feel it would be a much stronger document if we had targets around things and a little bit more specificity on a few other points, which I'll raise after this. But I guess what I'm wondering is, could we speak to the process for maybe putting some targets together and continuing to work toward a plan that is more, that will help us more when we hit the budget trail?
Ms. Miles Wilson.
So as we reflected on when we presented the budget book last week, there are a significant number of items that are reflected in the strategic plan that staff have already proactively worked into the budget. And so including things like the Indigenous Relations Framework, all of the OCP work's underway, you know, we could go on, there's quite a few items there. And so when you adopt this plan, what staff are going to do is take it away and look at the term of the plan and how all of the items in it, the goal is that they're all achieved at the end of the term. They're everything in there. And so staff will take it back and operationalize it, which you'll see coming forwards in future budget cycles. Obviously, it's at your discretion to direct the timing of when things come, but we are dealing with a kind of a tight budget mandate this year. And so I think we've put everything in there that we thought could fit at this point. But obviously, going through the budget cycle, you have every opportunity to recommend other things are added or removed or changed. And then obviously, items in the strategic plan will be things that we're thinking of for grant opportunities, because you've told us that those are your most important initiatives. The other thing I'll reflect on is that we are going to be implementing a corporate tracking program, like we've signed with Cascade, and we're going to be putting the strategic plan into that software so that we can come back with regular reporting to you so that you can see how we are making progress on your important priorities. And so that would give you an opportunity to also give us direction to course correct or scale up or scale back at those reporting opportunities. And then the last thing I'll say is that the goal, and it's part of the recommendation in the report, is that we would be bringing the strategic plan back for your review prior to the next budget cycle, so that we can reflect on it. Does it still make sense? Do we need to change things or reorder things, so that we're using that as a framework for the budget cycle? That's all I can say. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So reflecting on, Cascade and the incorporation of the strategic plan, usually that would come with timelines and progress indicators for all of the strategic plan items, including specific action items under each strategic piece. I wonder if it would provide any comfort if that direction from the board upon completion of the strategic plan asked staff to come back with a report to showing how it's been entered into Cascade and some of those timelines. I don't know how, I haven't seen the implementation here, but I know municipally it was sort of like Gantt charts that showed project timelines, and then working with council and staff, we were able to prioritize different items and shuffle them around, and then be able to reflect on them either quarterly or semi-annually where the progress was, and then of course adding other things that had come up. So is that what the intention is?
That is the intention, yes. And so the recommendation is a little bit more generic than that, but that is the intent. If you wanted to kind of amend that to add, we'd be open to that.
Thank you. Dr. Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. Like everyone, if you've got it open, page 7, the section under governance, and I'm going to ask all my municipal friends to close your eyes and think that you're an electoral area director for a minute. And I read the entire document from the perspective of, a developer, a community member reading this document. And under governance, it reads, the CVRD is governed by a 16-member board comprised of appointed directors from our 4 municipalities, Town of Lake Cowichan and Town of Ladysmith, City of Duncan, North Cowichan, our appointees based on population, and an electoral area director from 9 electoral areas. We elect the chair and vice chair. So I'm very pro-electoral area, and I think there's a really easy fix. The electoral area directors are elected. There's 9 of us. I think it's more than appropriate to have it reflected in the governance statement. And the easy fix is simply the CVRD is governed by a 16-member board comprised of 9 elected directors from the 9 electoral areas and appointed directors from the 4 municipalities, Town of Lake Cowichan, Town of Ladysmith, City of Duncan, Municipality of North Cowichan. North Cowichan has 4 appointees based on population, period. The CVRD elects a chairperson and vice chairperson annually. So I would suggest that as an amendment to the governance section. And I have it right here.
Was there anyone have an issue with that?
Okay, can you give me that? Thank you. Got it.
And I have a question about placemats after.
Follow up?
Sure. Do we have an idea what we would produce and or what content would go on placemats for around the board table?
I'm thinking a infographic of sorts. I'm sure we've all seen them before, which distills the plan down into something that you have as a 1-pager in front of you, easy to read, easy to reference. And I know in the past you've had one that had board priorities, one had electoral area priorities. So I just ask our consultant who does the graphic design just to kind of play around with a couple of options, but distill it down into something you can have in front of you. That would be the intent.
Thank you. Just going back to Director Nicholson's comment, if we provide direction upon the adoption of the strategic plan for staff to come back with a report and presentation around how we're going to track the strategic plan items, provide that specificity and timeline for board discussion, would that satisfy your concern around the sort of tracking and commitment to timelines and progress?
I think that would be helpful.
So I think if, I don't know if you or another director would kind of take the responsibility to make that motion upon the completion and adoption of the strategic plan, that would be helpful. I don't have any hands on my list or on my screen. So I'm wondering if, timing-wise, Ms. Miles Wilson, do we want to take a moment to take a break, or are we looking to move toward adoption pending inclusion of these items that are being discussed right now? Director Nicholson.
I have a couple of others to discuss. Regional planning. I understand it's all in there, I think, but I'm not completely clear that it is. So from my perspective, I think we have an emerging crisis around water that I think will significantly affect the way we do land use, make land use decisions, which for Director McClinton's, that is something that we do. And I also think hand in hand with this water issue is the loss of biodiversity, which should be everyone's concern and which we can influence a fair bit with the way we do land use. And so from my perspective, taking a more regional lens is incredibly important. The way we've got it structured in here is we're just going to take a look at that. So I would like to make sure that we are going to make some serious decisions about regional what we're going to do about things like water and biodiversity from a regional perspective during this next year, so that we can make some progress if we have to undertake a more comprehensive planning type thing. And so I really would like to see that this is this part of the plan is driven hard, because we're running out of time, from my perspective, in this term to make any progress. And we all know that once you get halfway through, things just kind of, we'll wait till next term, and then it's, so you have a very limited period. And then my other point is about emergency planning. I am uncomfortable that we have one line in there that is about, we will fully implement the emergency management couch as a regional service. And I think that's very important, but as a person that lives in the community who is really concerned about wildfire risk in the rural areas, another heat dome, from my perspective, and just the extreme weather things that we're worrying about housing homeless people in extreme weather. It seems to me that we should be also pushing, not just for implementing a regional service, but somehow making sure that people feel more confident about what they need to do when these emergencies arise. And I don't think we should wait until we've got all the all the governance stuff worked out. I think, and I know that there's lots of work that goes on with supporting people to develop neighborhood plans and so forth. I still don't think it's concrete enough for most people. And I think that would be helpful, because you don't want to have to develop it when you're having an emergency.
Mr. Chair, we have a workshop that we're going to be discussing regional planning. We have one board meeting left before the end of the year on December 13th. And then the goal within the plan there in strategic objective number 2 regards to regional planning does talk about making a decision by Q2 of next year on how and if you'd like to proceed. But open to suggestions if that needs to be amended.
Yeah, and no, but this also talked about how we more specifically in the strategic plan speak to things like risk mitigation and stuff around emergency management. I think the point Director Nicholson was trying to make is that the one line about implementing region-wide emergency management isn't adequate. So we need to think on that. Do you have more on your list, Director Nicholson? No? I'm going to go to Director Wilson for now, and then I think we're going to have to kind of have some conversation around how to include some of these thoughts in the plan. If I disagreed with something that I'd heard, I would say so. With enough brevity to make it still a strategic plan and not an action plan of every item we need to do, but be able to speak to some of the key things that should be in there. So, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've just been reading the Vice Chair's change to the paragraph, and I'm not sure if this is the time to bring this up. I would like to see just a very small change in the message that she sent out. Can I address that now, or would you like me to do it later on? I think what it says here, we acknowledge that our residents are facing rapid climate change, etc. And then it says, in addition to significant financial struggle. That, to me, is a very significant part of what people are facing right now, the financial struggle. So I would like to see that the words "in addition to" taken out, so that becomes part of we acknowledge that our residents are facing a blah 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 without the "in addition of." That financial struggle is an important and a significant one to me.
Okay, I don't think that's substantive enough to fight back on. Director Abbott.
I don't want to turn this into an editing exercise, but not everybody in the Cowichan Valley is suffering financial. I think put a period after the first part and then launch into, and many residents suffer financial distress, but not everybody in the Cowichan Valley is hurting. I'm sorry to say.
I would agree, but I also say more than in my recent experience, for sure. I see it in people that I consider peers that have significant incomes not even be able to afford to find a place to rent in the region. So
We needn't debate it. There are two things that first.
And they can both be true. Okay, I think we've heard the message. I think you can give us an opportunity to be able to include it. If this is to go back on the financial struggle piece, maybe you can give us an opportunity to make some edits before we.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, do you want to recess for a few minutes and we can kind of regroup and then, because we do have
Recess until 10. Ms. Miles Wilson?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Okay, well, I think going back to the proposed resolutions, there are two in front of you, and there is now, we have drafted a third to meet the request of the directors about the reporting framework.
Okay, go ahead.
And so the intent moving forwards from this, I've taken some, quite a lot of notes here, and I think we've documented a number of textual text changes, but also the addition of the advocacy item. The rest of it, I think we will just make those changes, and if you wanted to pass a resolution today that the plan be adopted with the changes discussed here today, I would be comfortable with that.
Thank you. So I want to give credit to the directors and to staff and Director Segal, and my apologies, I had to step out for a second, had a little bit of emergency. I think it's managed, maybe. Bad timing. But I want to thank the directors for the input, because from my perspective, and I know that we get into semantics and we may have varying opinions on the strength of language, but I think it's noteworthy, Director Nicholson's comments about setting out your action plan, informed by your strategic plan, setting targets and timelines and making commitments to those timelines. Always recognizing that, as Director Nicholson also commented, things come up and you need to be nimble enough to be able to respond. But I think the overarching themes that I see in the document and the changes that are proposed from what we heard this morning reflect the ever-changing reality that we're in. And we recognize that 6 months from now, there may be some things that happen. We just, still dealing with COVID and the fallout from that that may impact that. But if we have this strategic framework in place, and then we set our action plans and the reporting structure to be able to continue to measure the implementation of those priorities, I think it gives more confidence both around our table and in communities that we're committed to that vision. And I think in a lot of ways, a lot of what we're seeing in this document is reflected in the things that we're doing. And I'll think about, Ms. Miles Wilson mentioned UBCM this year. I don't think I've seen that volume or that effectiveness of advocacy. Director Douglas has invited me as Mayor of North Cowichan to attend meetings around the Chemainus watershed issues, flood mitigation issues, and I feel like there's a more active dialogue and respect for that than I've seen in my time at these tables, even though we're sometimes frustrated and challenged by the speed or lack thereof of progress on them. So if the board feels like these are going to be representative of what we're trying to do here, then I think I'm comfortable recommending that we do adopt it, subject to the inclusion of those items. Director Segal's already made some edits to the chair's message that I think are obviously very timely and reflective of what we're trying to say. Those little niggly things around semantics aside, I think it's looking good. Ms. Miles Wilson, or of course invite members of the board to add any additional comments, but I would hope that we would be able to make the motion and make those changes to adopt the plan, subject to including the changes that we've discussed this morning. Ms. Miles Wilson.
We also have a third resolution to reflect on the comments around the table, if Mr. Robbins wants to read that.
Sorry, I missed you there.
Mr. Robbins is going to read the third proposed resolution.
Okay.
That staff report within the first quarter of 2024, the status of the new strategic plan priorities.
Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Wilson. Discussion on the motion. I was going to put something more detailed, but I think that still delivers the outcome. So I think the expectation would be some presentation of the reporting and tracking tool, the strategic plan laid out in it with the action items underneath the strategic priorities. And then that would be for the board to discuss, refine, and sort of adopt that as the actual action framework for the strategic plan. Do we have any discussion? Director Justice.
Thank you. I realize that may have missed something, so Maybe I'm asking for a repetition, but when we're talking about reporting back to the board, will that be quarterly? Or are we just talking about this one time?
That would be an ongoing process. I believe we would be doing the quarterly updates, but Ms. Miles Wilson?
Yeah, I think we actually reflect on it being biannually, but we can do quarterly. I think maybe what I would suggest is that we bring the first report forwards, show you the framework, you can have an opportunity to provide input to it, and we can confirm how often you want to see it at that time. Because we can do quarterly, we can do biannually. Either of those are very common.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, I'll call the question on this motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Now, that was point 3. We still have points 1 and 2. Can you run us through those as well? Mr. Robbins.
To say there's a couple of hands up that went online.
Oh, my apologies.
It blinked out.
Sorry,
so
I just had no screen
That's
online, but now I see Director McClinton.
Can you hear me? We just
Yeah.
lost audio there for pretty much all of that.
When Mr. Robbins was talking about the motions?
Correct, all of it.
Okay. Sorry, we're having WebEx issues and technical issues and. Yeah, can you repeat it? But we need the addition of the subject to.
So the first recommendation, that subject to the changes introduced at the special meeting of the board of November 29th, that the strategic plan be adopted. And 2, that staff provide an update on progress on the strategic plan actions and to facilitate an opportunity to review the plan priorities in advance of the annual budget process. Did you hear that?
Were you able, yeah, okay. So we'll be looking for a mover and seconder, moved by Director McGonigal, seconded by Director Abbott. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Did you, I think the third motion, though, that you folks heard that at home, right? About the report, yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Robbins.
I don't think you want to go and do it again on item 13.
No, we dropped that item. Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Question period, I think?
Question period, and there's no one here nor online. So it looks like a motion to adjourn to a closed session.
Under sections 91.
Bear with me, Mr. Chair.
Community Charter Report for Section 90 and subsections as noted in the agenda.
I'm just going to give them to you, though, just so that we